I was a professional dancer in Hollywood, doing things like step-up movies, TV shows. And then during that time, I almost lost my brother to a traumatic brain injury from a motorcycle accident.
Hey guys, welcome to the channel. My name's Anthony and I'm a commercial DP / videographer here in Orlando, Florida. And I am super excited to talk about the Ronin 4D. Yes, I bought this camera twice. I purchased it when it first came out. Then I sold it probably 2 to 3 months after I did a couple projects for a couple reasons that I'll talk about. Purchased the Komodo, used that for 1.5 years. And now I actually sold the Komodo and purchased the Ronin 4D again for a couple specific reasons that I'll go over in this video. So this isn't an in-depth review as I haven't used this camera on enough projects to give a definitive opinion. I will say that I absolutely enjoy using this camera. Every camera that I've had prior, I've sold for specific reasons, and I haven't really thought about purchasing them again because those problems still exist. So in this video, I'll go over why I purchased it again and why I love using this camera, and it's way more than just a gimmicky gimbal camera because that couldn't be farther from the truth. Even if it didn't have the gimbal part of the camera and it was slightly cheaper, I would still purchase it for many reasons. So when the Ronin 4D first came out, I thought it was ridiculous. My friend that loves gear even asked me about it and I completely shut him down because I thought it was just dumb. But then I actually got my hands on one of them, and I would say about 2 weeks after I tried the Ronin 4D for the first time, I ended up purchasing one. The LiDAR focusing system, the tracking, the stabilization, the actual image that came out of the camera completely sold me on it within like 15 minutes of using it, which that says a lot because I'm really picky and peculiar about the cameras that I choose. I shot a couple projects with it and loved the camera, but there were 2 specific reasons why I ended up selling it and purchasing a Komodo instead. The first reason is its size. Although it's not the heaviest camera, and I've even built rigs that were heavier than the Ronin 4D fully kitted out, its ergonomics when the 4-axis stabilization turns on are a little odd and really hurt my back specifically. But not only that, there wasn't really an option to get nimble with the camera, and that's something that I really valued when looking for an A-cam, which is what the Ronin 4D was for me. That was the first reason that started pushing me away from the system and ultimately led to me selling it. There was a second reason though. Although I disagree with people that say that this is a niche camera because it really isn't. Once you actually use one, you'll see how useful it is for multiple different scenarios. I did end up finding myself not wanting to use it as an A-cam and grabbing my FX3 more, and paying $9 grand, $10 grand for a fully kitted out A-cam that I'm not even gonna use that often was the second reason why I ended up selling it. So it was the price. I did a mental inventory of my gear and made some business decisions that ultimately led me to selling the 4D because I figured if I sell it now while there's still hype around the camera, I'll make almost all of my money back instead of selling it later, because I knew so many people were gonna buy this camera thinking it was gonna make their lives easier and they were gonna end up selling it. So I sold it sooner than later to save money, and it was just a financial business decision that I made instead of keeping the camera and letting it depreciate over time. With that being said though, since selling the Ronin 4D, I have not been able to replicate the kind of shots that I got while I had the 4D on the different shoots. I kept looking at the image that came out of the camera when I would use the B-roll from other projects, and it really made me miss the camera, but I couldn't justify the price while it being almost a niche kind of camera. A lot has changed with the 4D ecosystem since selling my unit though. 2 things actually. The first one is the flex cable was announced I think a couple months ago, and although I again thought it was a gimmick, I started seeing people use this small little handheld package and still have the image, the tracking, the LiDAR focus, all of the different features that the Ronin 4D had, and it intrigued me. The second thing, which I was pretty confident was gonna happen anyways, was the resale value of the 4D dropped dramatically because people got frustrated with the camera. This isn't a camera that you can really plug and play. It is if you're familiar with cinema cameras, but if you're not, I can see how it can get a little frustrating. So the used market was flooded with really cheap Ronin 4Ds. And then as the cherry on top, they came out with the L mount at the same time that I purchased the Panasonic S5 II. So all these things added up to me making the decision to purchase the Ronin 4D again. I had portability. It was a package that was much easier to run around with if I did need that nimble setup. The price was a lot lower now, at least the used price was a lot lower. And it fit my camera ecosystem just like it did when I shot with the Sony cameras using the S5iix. As I mentioned, this isn't an in-depth review, but I do want to touch on why I believe this camera is a revolutionary camera, and that is not an exaggeration. That's not some hype to throw on DJI. I do believe the features that this camera has can change the industry if the industry wants to adapt, or if DJI does a better job at implementing these features and providing support for this camera. The first feature is this LiDAR focusing system. This kind of already existed, except with the 4D, it's way more integrated and way more advanced than anything that existed prior. And what this means is I can turn all of my manual focusing vintage lenses, whether it's my Leica Rs or if you have Canon FDs, you would never even think to do certain shots unless you had a focus puller or were on a bigger production. You can now do because of this little system. What I will say though is it's not as advanced as Sony's autofocus or Canon's autofocus, but it does a really good job, and there are a couple things within the 4D that make it way more usable than even Sony's autofocus. People will literally purchase the Tilta Advanced side handle and the Nucleus Nano just to have this easy manual focus pulling with their hand readily available. What the 4D does though is you can have autofocus enabled where the focus wheel will literally turn as you're focusing, and you can stop it when you feel it hunting for the back, or if you want it to go somewhere else mid-focus, you can stop it and slowly make it go to wherever you want. This is kind of hard to explain, so I'm hoping the B-roll helps, but I'll be going more in depth on this when I'm doing my full review on the Ronin 4D. But this is definitely something that changed the game for me when I was using the camera. And when I sold this camera to buy the Komodo, this was one of the features I missed more than anything else. The next feature I want to talk about is the internal NDs. It has an incredible amount of internal NDs. I think it's up to 9 or 10 stops. If you've seen my C70 review or have listened to anybody that has used a camera with internal NDs, you know how useful and how much we will rave about having that in camera and not having to screw on any filters, use matte boxes, or variable NDs in the adapter behind your lens. All right, so these features in the Ronin 4D are pretty nuts. The high bright monitor, the tracking feature that you're watching right now is pretty revolutionary. And if I don't want the tracking on and I have my framing correctly, and I just want to start talking to camera, I can. Or if I want to use this on set to do multiple different shots, it's so easy to do. Tracking is just very, very useful. Also, having this monitor so I could view my image wirelessly, change any different settings that I want. If I want to do the NDs, I could literally do it from here. Full camera control. But yeah, let's go on to the next part. The whole ecosystem is very integrated. It almost reminds me of Apple. It's like DJI is the Apple of the camera community without the really good support from Apple. If DJI had really good support and they tweaked a couple of things, I wholeheartedly believe that they would become the Apple of the camera industry. That's a bold statement, but just when you use this camera, it really feels like that kind of ecosystem. It's like when you get iMessages on your Apple Watch or your laptop gets all the notifications and everything is just easily integrated. That's how I feel with the Ronin 4D ecosystem. It's hard to explain, you just have to try one to know what I'm talking about. And the last reason why I love the 4D is of course its 4-axis stabilization. The types of shots you can get with this camera are wild, and you barely have to try, which is kind of crazy. To replicate some of the shots that you can get with the 4D with a regular cinema camera, you would need a crew, which involves paying more people, maybe renting out a day in a dolly, having a really, really long track, because you can run with this camera and parallax across a whole stage and it be ridiculously smooth without even trying that hard. And that's just one example. But yeah, those are my thoughts on the Ronin 4D and why I purchased it in the first place, sold it to buy the red Komodo, and then sold the red Komodo to buy it again. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to hit that like button. Subscribe if you want to be notified for future content. I'll be making a whole behind the scenes of the little production that I did using this camera. And of course, I'm actually gonna be making an in-depth review after using this on multiple sets. I'll be doing some cinematography breakdowns and lighting tips, as well as gear reviews on things that will actually make your life easier and not just add to the hype on YouTube. Hopefully, at least that's my goal. I don't want to just add to hype. I want to really provide value for the filmmaking community and maybe help save some people money, as well as time and frustration on their filmmaking journey. So that's all for this one, and I'll see you in the next one.